Peace and blessings to the family. It is me, Coach67SportsTV. Shout out to the awesome and amazing LDBC, Lions and Boston community. Shout out to the Louisiana All-American Sports Network. And shout out to the greatest university in the world, the Southern University, home of the mighty Jaguars. The YouTube channel has finally been monetized. To all my LDBC family members, to Jaguar Nation, to everybody, I just want y'all to know y'all are greatly valued, greatly appreciated. Could not have done it without all of you. Just want y'all to know y'all are appreciated to the fullest. Now, what was supposed to happen this morning was I was supposed to do this live stream this morning. And then later on today, really at this point in time right now, I was supposed to come back with episode 49 of Bayou Sports Talk. However, more than likely, kids busy, it's the holiday season. So, she busy, she tied up, she doing whatever she doing. So I'm not going to have Bayou Sports Talk today. We may do it, some other day. More than likely, it won't be anytime soon, to be truthful. But, even with that being said, I just want you to know, every subscriber, you are greatly appreciated. The channel is up to 1,010 subscribers. And in terms of those subscribers, a lot of those individuals are, first and foremost, LDBC family members. Y'all are greatly appreciated. My actual relatives, actual family members, appreciate y'all too. Diehard members of Jaguar Nation. And not only that, in these last 3 years, I've been to 3 different schools. I'm an administrator now, but I was a coach and a PE teacher at the 2 previous schools. And a lot of students that were in my class, so on and so forth, they subscribe to the channel also. So I just want y'all to know, every subscriber, every LDBC family member, every student, every family member, everybody that just been rocking out with the boy, I just want y'all to know y'all are greatly valued, greatly appreciated. Let's see who we got in the chat. First of all, relax and calm rain. You say salute Coach 67, Chad, HBCU family, and Jaguar Nation. He said, congratulations, bro. I'm happy for you reaching this milestone. Man, relax and calm rain is one of the day one subscribers, one of the loyal subscribers. I just want you to know you are greatly valued and greatly appreciated. Always one of the first two people in the chat. So, man, salute and shout out to Relax and Calm Rain. Salute to the other family, Motivation to Be a Millionaire. He said, salute Coach 67, Chat HBCU family, and Jaguar Nation. He said, congratulations, Coach. You deserve it. Man, I just want you to know, Motivation to Be a Millionaire. You another one, too. One of the loyal day one subscribers. Just want you to know you are valued. You are greatly appreciated. And I appreciate the kind words. Of course, Relax and Calm Rain and already blessed the super chat. Appreciate your relaxing, calm rain. He asked with the super not a super chat. He blessed the cash app. So he said he can't send super chats. Send me your cash app again so I can bless you, Coach. Of course, my cash app is $Coach, capital J, capital H, capital J. And he didn't already sent the first contribution. And maybe shout out to my brother Jared 11 Green and the entire Southern Baller Show collective. Tomorrow we're going to be back on his channel, his show, with another edition of the Southern Baller Show. But I know they're probably going to come through later. My collective brothers, part of LDBC family, Jarrett, JB, Brent Fox, Jay Good, Joe Townsend, and major shout out to Old Hillside Bourbon Company, who sponsored my first show after I hit 1,000 subscribers. So I appreciate everybody. Man, I appreciate. Okay. Okay. Got a call. They kept calling. I don't know what it is. No, no, not really. It was more of multiple phone calls to both devices for whatever reason. They know I'm live, but they still calling. Uh, Salute to your boy Jay. He said, "Congratulations, coach. I appreciate you." TJ Man say, "What's up? Was that Jaguar fam? Salute to you, TJ Man. Congrats, coach. Well deserved. I appreciate you." Salute to my brother going with soul. He say, "Salute, salute, salute, fam. Congratulations on 1K, man. I appreciate you. Going with soul. Appreciate you to the fullest." Your boy Jay say, "Tony Clayton interview this morning. Got the streets talking. LOL." Oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna talk about it. It wasn't no audio. I was switching device, going with soul. Sixer, uh, no BS friend. He said searching for the funny. Found none of my phone battery drained itself to escape the video. Nah, nah, nah. Hey, this is my first monetized live stream. Trust me, I ain't trying to escape nothing. All right, but your boy Jay brought up a valid point. I'm definitely gonna get into that. I'm gonna address a couple topics, well, more than a couple topics. But since I'm not actually doing an episode about you sports talk today. Basically, I'm taking the 2 live streams. This live stream, which was supposed to be this morning, and the live stream for Bayou Sports Talk, and I'm merging them in basically into one live stream. So the first thing I want to talk about is some of Southern University coaches. Last week we talked about how, Southern University hired Ken Merchant as the offensive coordinator, and we know that the defensive coordinator is going to be former Ram, Notre Dame player Todd Light is going to be the defensive coordinator. So we pretty much got that squared away. We got that out the way. So some of the new names, of course, we already knew about Donald Penn, former Pro Bowl offensive lineman for the Raiders. Also, former Southern University defensive back Anthony Balancier is going to be the defensive back coach. And, basically, we got just a lot of coaches. Coach Johnson, he's going to be the assistant head coach. He's going to be the general manager. Coach Robert Covington, he's going to be the running backs coach. So these are some of the coaches that has kind of, we know they haven't made like an official announcement, but we already know these are pretty much the guys, you know what I'm saying? Man, salute to my brother, Big Joe Townsend, standing on LDBC business, Mr. Old Hillside. Man, salute to the brother, Big Joe, one of the members of the collective stopping through. But yeah, so these are some Southern University coaches. And, the thing I don't like in terms of the stigma of like SWAC coaches, well, first of all, shout out to Willie Simmons, who used to be the head coach at FAMU. Last night, they played in a bowl game. And I'm not going to lie, they started out good against UTSA. They was up 14-0. Then you turn around and you look up. They went from being up 14-0. And next thing you know, guess what? They down 24-14. And I'm like, dang. So the final score ended up being 57-20 in favor of UTSA. It got out of hand, and it got out of hand quickly. But congratulations to Willie Simmons on a great season. And the reason why I want to point him out, because, aside from Deion Sanders, there's this stigma around SWAC coaches. And basically, the stigma is that SWAC coaches are not good, like they bottom tier FCS coaches. And lastly, they're really not good. They really don't make adjustments. They don't make in-game adjustments. They really don't, scout the opposition well, or, they don't have good solid game plans, whatever the case may be. And I think I strongly disagree with that. But based on people's sentiments and that ideology that SWAC coaches aren't good, the fact that in addition to Marshall Faulk, you have a couple former NFL players on his staff. And also, you have a former Southern University player that was on the last SWAC championship team at Southern University. And not only that, but you have just some solid coaches on the coaching staff. Based on that theory, which I strongly disagree with. I disagree with that line of thinking, that philosophy, that ideology. But even with that being said, based on that, from a X's and O's standpoint, Southern University should have by far, on paper, the best coaching staff in the SWAC. Not taking into consideration that Marshall Faulk doesn't really have any prior head coaching experience. So that's the first thing I kind of want to address. Also, some of the commitments and players has kind of been, etched in stone. Not etched in stone, but I mean the first wave, you know what I'm saying? Man, salute to my brother, Big Joe Townsend. Man, Big Joe said, Coach just wanted to put some color in the chat to all the haters. I'm not a Jaguar fan. I'm just a J Good's twin brother. Congrats again, Coach, on Hillside Bourbon Company. Man, I'm telling y'all right now, man. Hey, y'all go out during this holiday season and get you a bottle of Old Hillside Bourbon. You know what I'm saying? Salute. It's a black-owned company. And like I said, man, salute to my brother, Big Joe Townsend. And, and like he said, you know, a couple of family members in the chat thought him and Jay Good, you know, salute to my brother Jay Good too. Jay Good played ball at Southern. Big Joe played at Louisville. People think, like he said, every, you know, big guy that's light-skinned and they have a beard, you know, they think they all look alike. So some of my people thought Jay Good and Joe Townsend were the same person. And I'm like, no, bro, they are not the same person. Like, they are two different people. So I think, you know, basically they were saying, you know, on the Southern Baller Show, Jay Gooden had been on in a while. And, you know, Joe Towns started making more regular appearances. And they just came to the conclusion that Jay Gooden and Joe Towns was the same person. And I'm like, no, man, that is not the case. So to the people that said that, nah, not whatsoever. But getting back to the to that notion that SWAC coaches are trash. Now I disagree with that. You know, as we can see, Willie Simmons has been elevated, Deion Sanders, but you know, Jay Good now, we've been talking, well, really we talk every day via text message, off again, on again, and we just keep doing our thing. But we talked about what your boy Jay put in the chat, and we talked about the conversation on the Carlos Brown show. So we getting ready to touch on that in a brief second. But yeah, but continuing on what we were talking about in terms of the Carlos Brown show, you know, shout out to Carlos Brown. The irony is Carlos Brown and I had a English 111 class at Southern 20 years ago. And this was during around, it was what the 2005 fall semester. And, you know, he and I was talking about my people, Theo Bernard, who that year in the Bayou Classic dropped a interception or whatever. And he didn't say anything negative, but we just were talking about it in general or whatever. And at the time, he had a radio show back then. So Carlos Brown has been in the, you know, in the media space for some years. And, you know, he does excellent work or whatever. And, you know, not just shout out to him, but, you know, shout out to Perry White, shout out to C. Wells, the SWAC Talk, Perry White, the Jaguar Journal. You know, all these brothers are doing, you know, great work in the space. And truthfully speaking, I know a good chunk of my subscribers are followers of both Carlos Brown, Perry White, and C. Wells. But continuing on, So in terms of the Carlos Brown show this morning, Carlos Brown had on Tony Clayton, and it was a pretty good conversation, in terms of the dialogue, so on and so forth. Basically they were talking about uh, some of the issues that kind of affect Jaguar Nation in terms of the football program. First and foremost, he was talking about the hire of Marshall Falk. And basically what he was saying is, yeah, Marshall Falk has kind of been on the radar for a minute or whatever. And it was more of a Roman Banks idea to bring in Marshall Falk, which was, kind of shocking to me, but I mean, it is what it is. And, he also talked about how Marshall Falk is a selfless individual from the standpoint of he wanted a lot of that money to go back into, just go back into the pool for the coaches, and he really wasn't worried about himself individually. And not only that, he was talking about in terms of, some of the stuff that need to be taken care of in terms of like facilities. He was talking about doing some more work in the north end zone, and how, stuff in the field house needs to be addressed. And just from a facility standpoint, how, back in the gap, when Southern did a lot of work around campus back in the day, Southern had the best facilities in the SWAC. And if you go back to like 2013, when, some people might have said Southern might not have had the best facilities in the SWAC, but, there's some pretty decent ones. But over the years, Southern has kind of fallen to the middle of the pack, whereas you got other schools like maybe Alcorn State, whoever the case may be, would be considered to have some good facilities. And even Dion, with what he's done at Jackson State, they have good facilities also. So, he talked about that component of it. And he talked about the monetary aspect of it. It was kind of brought up and mentioned how, recently there's been some cryptic social media posts surrounding Trey Holly. And it seems as if Jackson State tried to reach out to him and, give him a little bread. But, Tony Clayton basically was like, hey, we got to match that, so on and so forth. And, Southern has gotten a lot of commitments. They got the young man Tig, the quarterback from Santa All, which was a big get. But more than anything, he was saying that in 2025, 2026, college football is a business. It's big business. And not only is it big business, but you have to kind of put the resources in place to where you could compete. Like if you don't have the finances to do what you need to do, I'm not trying to throw other schools under the bus, but maybe like an institution like Valley, it's going to be difficult for them to get to where they need to get to, or maybe even the UAPB. So at the end of the day, he talked about it being big business. It's, it was such a good conversation. But one of the things that really stood out to me, my mom and I was listening to it after Jay Good was like, man, coach, you got to check this out, and woo. I'm like, all right. Because, I had a lot going on today. But basically he was saying that the naming rights money is like a big deal. So he was saying that basically they may have to, one big company like American Airlines, whatever, Old Hillside Bourbon Company, they may sell a naming rights to A.W. Mumford Stadium. And I'm not gonna lie, as soon as he said that, I'm like, Tony Clayton was like, it may ruffle some feathers, and I'm like, whoa, hold up now. A.W. Mumford is a legend in these SWAC streets, and it's definitely a legend from a Southern University standpoint. In my humble opinion, I think he probably the greatest SWAC coach to me. Of course, a lot of people say Eddie Robinson, but that was like a huge portion of the conversation. The fact that you already named the field after Pete Richardson. The stadium is named after A.W. Mumford. So basically, they was talking about how you would move around naming the field. You already got the field after Pete Richardson. The stadium is already named after A.W. Mumford. How would you honor A.W. Mumford and give the naming rights to whatever corporation would do so? Of course, we got another super chat in the building. My brother Jay Good, former Southern University Jaguar. Man, salute to my brother Jake Good, former Jag. He said, "You know how we do it. Let me color around up in here." Like my twin. He said, as the nephew said, congrats. Uh, congrats on the Stack family, reaching a 1,000 subscribers. Go Jags. Play for Falk, the Falk era. Man, salute to my brother, Jake Good. And like I was saying, that was the biggest thing. You know, he kind of touched on the coaching staff, which we talked about already. In addition to that, in terms of the coaching staff, we talked about the coaching staff. Uh, they brought in they got a lot of commitments or whatever in this early phase of recruiting. And, it's kind of hard to kind of gauge stuff from a recruit standpoint. It's kind of early with that second window in terms of the transfer portal. I'm almost certain him and his coaching staff, that's where they're going to do most of their major lifting. But as of right now, I don't know if they're going to purge the roster somewhat and do like Tremaine Jackson did with PV and bring in like a ridiculous amount of players. But truthfully speaking, I'm not going to lie, this was a historically bad team. If there's not like a huge, I'm not going to say roster purge, but if there's not a certain degree of turnover, you can't expect a ridiculous amount of improvement from a team standpoint, because despite how good your coaches may be, even if you did bring in an elite level quarterback, which they talked about on the Carlos Brown show with Tony Clayton. Clayton is under the mindset if you got an elite level quarterback and elite level kicker, then that should completely turn your fortunes around, and that's not the case. Even if you put an elite level quarterback on this team this past year with Trey Holly, and you put an elite level kicker on that team also, that team might win maybe 1 or 2 extra games. I mean, you got to have some dogs up front on both sides of the ball. I mean, the line play was terrible for Southern this past season. I felt bad for Kelby Givens, even though he was first team all SWAC. He didn't have the kind of season he had last season. But part of that was, if you look at the last couple of years with Kelby Givens, year before last, he had Taj Brown to kind of feed off of. And the spring before that, he had Trey Lane. Then he had Taj Brown to feed off at the other end spot. This past season, Darius Harry kind of came around. Jelani Davis. Even if you'd kept Jelani Davis this season and have him play the opposite end spot, and you'd have had a couple D tackles to kind of replace Davin Cotton and Willie Miles, your defensive line would have been straight. But truthfully speaking, no disrespect to the defensive lineman they had, but at points it kind of felt like it was Kelby Givens and 3 substitute defensive linemen. So at the end of the day, like, unless there's a significant amount of turnover in this roster, we can't expect him to wave a magic wand and win the SWAC championship year one with a lot of the same players. I mean, the vast majority of the roster is the same. Now, I know at some point he probably gonna make more roster moves, but you really can't expect a complete turnaround right off the bat. Man, salute to my family, LDBC family member, Thomas from the Bronx, Thomas DeLuke. He said, congrats, bro, on the monetization. Happy holidays to you and your family. Cheers to a great 2026. Salute. Man, salute to your fam. I appreciate Thomas from the Bronx. Man, y'all, especially all my LDBC family members that's into boxing. Man, go check out Thomas from the Bronx channel because on my channel here, they got a picture of me, him, and the brother that that people say is a weight bully. I'm like, man, come on, man, this dude is not a weight bully. But what we linked up with ATL, man, hey, in fact, I'm gonna repost that picture. But happy holidays to you, Thomas from the Bronx, man. I appreciate you, and everybody that's coming through. That everybody has to show some love. But like I was saying, in terms of the Carlos Bryant interview from this morning, like I said, my biggest takeaway was, I'm not gonna lie, I mean, I'm sure A.W. Mumford family, I'm not gonna lie, college football in 2025, 2026 is big business. And like your boy Jay said, JSU tried to throw some bread at Trey Holly, and they don't even have no money like that. That's big facts. And Marshall Falk and his staff, they've gotten like 15, 16 commitments. They got some high school players, some JUCO players. But I think unless some of the current players that's currently on the roster, unless there's some turnover with those guys, it's gonna be hard for him just to wave a magic wand and expect this team to go from being historically bad to winning the SWAC championship in 1 year. And not only that, but I think that's the thing. I think Carlos Brown kind of pointed out, like, people always say wrong, but I'm gonna say if you're a great African empire, or even if you're a Roman Empire, for those people that have a Eurocentric mindset, an empire isn't built in a day. It's going to take some time. And, they were pointing it out this morning. Like, it takes time, it takes patience to get a program the way they need to be. They need to upgrade a lot of facilities. He was talking about leaks in the field house. You need elite level strength conditioning coach. You need to fix upgrade some of the facilities. Not only that, he was talking about them potentially taking the ROTC program. He was talking about how, Eric Gordon and some of the other lawyers, how he been challenging them to put up money. And he was talking about how the governors need to contribute more money or whatever, and how they've done good from a contribution standpoint. But at the same token, they also, they've also, not only made good contributions, but they need to up the bread, and they need to keep the money going. And in terms of the naming rights thing, it could be something that's controversial because, A.W. Mumford is not only a legend, like I said, at Southern University, in terms of being Southern University's all-time winning coach. He was the predecessor to Eddie Robinson, but not only that, but, he a legend just in the SWAC and in Southern University in general. And the fact that from a monetary standpoint, you need to really be able to generate money and generate funds. And the best way you go about, not the best way, but one of the ways you go about doing it is naming rights. We've seen it with the Superdome. It was the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, not the Caesar Superdome. You got the Smoothie King Center right next to the Superdome. So, naming rights fees is big money. And if you could get a corporation to donate like $10 million and name it, we just going to use, for example, American Airlines at A.W. Mumford Stadium or whatever. I don't know how they would do that. And basically, that's one thing you really need to kind of take into consideration. How could you generate that money? How could you get those funds? And in addition to generating that money and getting those funds, but do that, generate the money, get the funds, and still honor the legendary A.W. Mumford, and still get the monetary aspect of it. You really can't, change it to A.W. Mumford Field because your second one in this coach, Pete Richardson, who did big things in the SWAC, the dean of the SWAC, the field is already named after him. So I guess they were saying, how could you serve two masters? how could you really honor A.W. Mumford and get the money that you're going to need to move your program forward? And not only that, but, he talked about multiple ways of generating funds. Like I said, they talk about doing some different things in the north end zone, in the south end zone, so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, like Tony Clayton, he's doing big things. He's on the board. And they talked about a variety of different things in terms of, like I said, in potentially taking the ROTC program at Southern University and merging it with LSU's program, how he's trying to get other lawyers in Baton Rouge involved. He kind of touched on group economics. Of course, we could see it here in the LDBC, how we support one another. Old Hillside Bourbon Company, Jay Good, Joe Town, if somebody in the LDBC got something, we all sticking together, we rocking with each other, we supporting each other, you know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, it is, he talked about, the voter aspect of it, how HBCUs has contribute greatly to the middle class in this particular country. So I'm not gonna lie, this morning's episode of the Carlos Brown Show, it was a very, very good episode. He touched on a lot of issues that affects Southern University program, from the coaches that have been added to the coaching staff. He really didn't touch a whole lot on recruiting. And, they were saying in terms of where would you rank Southern University next season in terms of the SWAC West. And basically, they kind of talked about it a little bit. They didn't go in depth with it, and they really didn't spend a lot of time on it, but it was basically saying, of course, you got to have PV number 1, PV 1, probably Alcorn 2, maybe Grambling 3, Texas Southern 4. Hey, so West Southern would rank in terms of the SWAC West. Now, it's a long way from SWAC Media Day, but at the same token, when it comes to Southern University and football, especially in Baton Rouge, college football is one thing you talk about 24/7, 365. And truthfully speaking, hey, I'm not even going to lie. It's never too early to start talking about it. And truthfully speaking, I know some people might have been outraged. You're like, hey, you got Marshall Falk, you got a great coaching staff. How could you potentially project Southern University to be, 5th or 6th in the SWAC West? But like I say, unless there's considerable roster turnover, I don't know if Marshall Falk is just going to keep the players that they have and the new recruits that's coming in, or is at some point he going to, purge the roster and encourage some of these players to hit the transfer portal. And truthfully speaking, a bird in the hand is better than two in the bush. So me, if I'm currently a player on Southern University's roster and I have a scholarship, I'm not jumping in the transfer portal unless I'm certain I have a soft place to land. So you really can't blame some of these young men that's already on the team. And I'm not even going to lie. Some of Southern University starters last year really didn't like the world on fire. Don't get me wrong. There were a considerable amount of injuries on the team last year. But even with that being said, even with the considerable amount of injuries, a lot of Southern University's backup, they really didn't get to play. They really weren't even playable. They weren't playable because some of the starters weren't that good, truthfully speaking. So, hey, what it's going to look like. And not only that, but they kind of touched on the go-go offense. And for those individuals that don't know, I kind of had to look it up myself in terms of, looking at some film. Essentially, all the go-go offense is basically, it's kind of like zone blocking up front, and you running midline option. You running inside zone. You just say you have two backs. You got the shotgun. He kind of in a pistol or he in a gun, and he got two backs behind. The first back, he runs inside zone with that back. Then he runs triple option with the next back. And then off of that, it's a run-heavy offense, and you kind of base your passing game off of that. And even with that being said, Carlos Brown kind of touched on it also. Like, you got to have balance. And Southern University's offense this past season, at times it was terrible. But the issue is who's going to be the signal caller? And I know people are saying, Yeah, Southern got a couple elite level quarterbacks coming in. But even with that being said, like you gotta get the right signal caller. And for the most part, all the quarterbacks that you had on your roster last year, hey, they still there, you know. So who gonna come in? Who gonna be the quarterback? Even just we gonna say, for example, you did beat Grambling in the Bayou Classic. It was more so your secondary gave up some plays on the back end, but the defensive line probably had the best game of the season. Really don't count valid because you're supposed to be valid. That's really nothing to brag about. But even with that being said, like, you know, truthfully speaking, you know, your quarterback play, I mean, even though you won the Bayou Classic, Cameron McCoy went, what, 6 of 18? I mean, don't get me wrong, like 5 of those 6 throws were very timely, but even if you do run a go-go offense, you cannot go 6 of 18 and expect to beat many teams in the SWAC. So the quarterback play is going to have to be there. I don't care if you run the ball 60% of the time, 70% of the time, 75% of the time. There needs to be a passing threat because even if you look at FIU last night with Willie Simmons, we know how good a offensive coordinator and play caller Willie Simmons was when he was at FAMU. Once UTSA realized, hey, they really can't throw the ball like that, we just going to load up and stop the run. Once they shut down the running game or once they loaded up to stop the run, there was nothing they really could do because both of their quarterbacks, the quarterback that played, both quarterbacks were nicked up. So I guess they went with the quarterback that was less hurt, and it really didn't make a difference. So at the end of the day, like you got to have an elite level quarterback. You got to have some dominant linemen up front on both sides of the ball. You got to have the special teams in place in terms of having the elite level punt and kick returner. You got to have an excellent kicker, punter, and you got to have some dynamic skill players. Even though Trey Holly is the best running back I've seen in my lifetime at Southern University, even with that being said, like even last year with that team, as good as he is from a talent standpoint, he really couldn't overcome the struggles you had at times with the offensive line play and you not having a real good passing game to complement it. And then it went to a point where for a good portion of the season, he wasn't getting enough touches. Then he went to the point where you overused him and he got hurt leading up to the Bayou Classic. And so much so, Barry Remo really was the guy against Texas Southern. And he had a heck of a game against Texas Southern, and he had a heck of a game in the Bayou Classic. But even in the Bayou Classic, I still think Trey Holly was a little bit hurt. So at the end of the day, like you got to have balance. You got to have a balanced approach. Yeah. I mean, really, it's some interesting components to really take into consideration when you think about the naming rights thing and that whole situation. Basically, I mean, naming rights is a way to generate money. You really don't want to offend, A.W. Mumford's family, but at the same token, like it's still big business. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, yeah, I am Waffles, man. Salute to you. Stay focused, say. He said, damn, they are not good for they're not good for the players. Your boy JC, Tony outbeating Jackson to keep Trey Holly was cool. Yeah, that's a big deal. Your boy JC, funny thing is Jackson State doesn't even have the money to pay him. They can't pay their other players. They can't play the players, and not only that, they having issues with the vet. They having issues with the vet. So I mean, they got issues of their own. They in a deficit every year with the $1 million that you got to invest in the vet. But and I know it's a HBCU thing, but the issue I've had is the fact that the disparity in PWIs, especially the Power 4, Power 5 PWIs, when it comes to the SWAC and HBCUs in general, I read this article and I talked about it here on my channel. Tony Clayton, he doing his thing in terms of getting other lawyers involved, funding in terms of getting state officials like the government involved in funding. But truthfully speaking, when you look at the disparity in funds going to LSU and funds going to Southern and Grambling, and not just Southern and Grambling, but all the other schools in the SWAC, they basically talked about, in this article I was reading, that the state of Louisiana owes Southern University $1 billion. And not only that, HBCUs collectively as a whole were owed more than $12 billion. And I'm like, dang. So it kind of goes to show the disparity from a funding standpoint when you look at HBCUs versus PWIs. And your boy Jay said a Delta Airline Mumford Stadium will have people angry. Oh no, I'm not gonna lie. Even my mom, she was like, man, salute to my brother Jared 11 Green, salute to your family. My mom, when we were listening to it coming back from Gonzalez, basically she was like, look, hey son, I already know when he said that goes to show you how she graduated from Southern, I graduated from Southern, but how well she knows me, because even when Tony Clayton touched on the naming rights thing, I guess she must have saw it on my face when I was driving, like, hey, it kind of touched the nerves, you know what I'm saying? So she was like, hey, son, I already know what you're thinking. But she was like, hey, from a financial standpoint, if you want to compete, then guess what? Like, you have to be able to compete financially before you're able to compete on the field. And I'm like, that's an interesting point, you know what I'm saying? So she brought up a valid point. And I'm not gonna lie, Tony Clayton, he doing this thing. Man, salute to the family, Cassio Odell. He said, what's up, coach? Salute to your fam. But yeah, I mean, it's very interesting, And your boy Jay said they need dogs up front on both sides of the ball. You need trenches. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, the line play needs to be there without question, you know what I'm saying? And he said Southern offensive line play has been bad since Dooley. And this past season, the D-line was what I've seen in a long time. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. This was like the worst Southern defensive line I've seen in years. You know what I'm saying? And Jay Good brought up an interesting point. He said patience is key, coming from the type of roster and season. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. You had a historically bad roster, historically bad season, so it's gonna be, patience is gonna be key. And like I say, once more again, salute to my brother Thomas from the Bronx. Uh, your boy J said if Holly was to leave, I'll try to get Caleb Johnson from LSU, Dalen Hayton from Colorado to pair with Remo. Yeah, and not only that, but we talked about strength conditioning. I'm not gonna lie. You have someone like a Marion Asbury. I think if he really hits the weight room and he gets bigger, stronger, faster, it's gonna be interesting to see. Because I'm not gonna lie, in a couple of these Facebook groups like Jaguar Plaza and a couple of them, like some of the, not a bunch, but a few people really weren't happy with the early commits that Southern has. And basically, my thinking is I didn't respond because, after the whole fiasco with me asking should Southern change their jerseys in different Southern University Facebook groups, Facebook has limited the amount of posts I could make, comments I could make in these different Southern University and SWAC group chats. But even with that being said, I'm like, every player is not going to be a superstar. So if your expectation is that you're going to have a glorified all SWAC team with all 11 players in all three phases of the game, like, you are delusional. Jay Good said, I can tell you, he said, as curating large-scale events here in the DFW, naming rights are necessary and are important. He said there are ways you can do both or still preserve the legacy of the legends. Yeah, and I'm not going to lie. I mean, my initial reaction when they talked about, naming rights and touching A.W. Mumford Stadium, I'm like, And the way he was talking, but not only touching A.W. Mumford Stadium, but also the Phil G. Clark Activity Center and Mini Dome. It's like, hey, your boy just said if anybody complains about naming rights, they will get over it when they see the check. Well, basically, they say the exact same thing. So she kind of brought up the same point, you know what I'm saying? And I read this earlier, but Keep It Up Fam say this should have been done, the naming rights deal, but blame leadership for always being late to the party. It ain't just Southern. I mean, that's a SWAC thing. That's an HBCU thing, you know what I'm saying? So I don't think it's just Southern University administration late to the party. I think it just kind of is what it is. Your boy did say Coach Falk did say if anybody hit the portal, he would help them find a home. I read this earlier. He said, but who would even want players from here? Only a few were good. I'm not going to even lie. I'm going to be honest with you. I think quite a few of your players probably going to have to go down a level if they did hit the portal. But that's why I don't think you have a whole lot of players hitting the portal. Jay Good said, looks like 3 quarterbacks are returning from last year and incoming freshmen. He said, don't know what the portal brings. You don't need more than 3 QBs. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. And I'm not even going to lie. I was wondering about the whole situation with Jalen Woods. I mean, after the season he had, I'm surprised he even would want to come back to Southern. But, I mean, he going to come back. Of the returning guys you got, he the best. Cameron McCoy, I'm going to just be honest. I mean, the best game he played all year was in a Bayou Classic. But like I said, he still went 6 of 18. And Ashton Strada, like, he was a better passer than Cameron McCoy, but he struggles to read coverage. His passes aren't always catchable. So, like, these are some things you need to consider, you know what I'm saying? Your boy Jay said 3 quarterbacks are returning, but he's bringing in his own guys. I wonder how this will work. And that's what I'm saying, too. I mean, in mass, do you just purge your roster and take away scholarships? I mean, from my understanding, I don't know how that's going to work. From what I heard, I don't know how true it is. I guess he really didn't want to go the route that Deion Sanders went when he first got to Colorado. But at the same token, this team is historically bad. If it's historically bad, it's historically bad for a reason, you know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, it's like, all right, hey, what you gonna do? So it kind of is what it is. But this is gonna be interesting to see how, things look moving forward. But some changes got to be made from a roster standpoint, But, I like the early commitments that he has, the St. All quarterback Tig, and just some of the players, I'm not going to lie, I think they got, some pretty good players that are committed to Southern. A couple of them are developmental players. A couple of them, I think, could be contributors. But I think, the bulk of your heavy lifting is going to have to be done through the portal. And we'll see how things play out. And your boy Jay said, maybe Coach Falk is willing to let the current players battle the portal players. He said, I think we all know who winning that if he bringing in Power 4 players. And, I mean, that's the thing about it, too. A lot of people have kind of been speculating, and we talked about this on the last show. Like, I think the impression is that this roster is going to be portal heavy. But if you got, in this early wave, you got 15, 16 commits, whatever you got, like, how many more players are you going to bring in, during the big window when players really start hitting the portal? So that's going to be interesting to see. And, I mean, don't get me wrong. I know basically you were able to extend from 85 to 105 players on your roster for SWAC schools and teams like Southern. All the schools don't have the finances to carry 105 players. I think Southern is more than capable of doing that. But if you had 17 players that were seniors last year and you have 3 players in the portal and you already got 15, 16 commits, like, from a number standpoint, how is that going to work out? So it's going to be interesting to see, how things play out, how things work out in that regard. And not only that, but I mean, it's pivotal. I mean, we know, I hate to always compare LSU to Southern because it's like comparing apples and oranges, But we know probably in about 2 hours, an hour and a half and some change, LSU is getting ready to play in the Texas Bowl against Houston. And the irony is Southern starts off the season next year against Houston. And I'm like, woo! But anyway, like, even this time right now, it's not just pivotal for Southern, but it's pivotal for LSU. It's pivotal for especially the SWAC schools like Jackson State. I think Jackson State got 25 players in the portal. It's pivotal for a team like FAMU who bringing in Quinn Gray. How many players is Quinn Gray going to bring from Albany State? We already know Isaiah knows he probably going to be at the top of the list. You got to bring in your guy as quarterback. And it's a pivotal for a team like Alabama State. I mean, even PV got players that hit the portal. The wide receiver, Rockwell, he hit the portal. But, you're talking, if you Alabama State, Andrew Body hit the portal. Carl Ligon, former Southern University running back, hit the portal. So this is like a crucial and critical time. You know what I'm saying? Man, salute to my brother Brent Fox, another member of our Southern Baller Show collective. He said on the move, but still wanted to show some support. Man, I appreciate it to the fullest. Man, y'all go check out my brother Brent Fox channel. Go check out my brother Jared Lover Green channel. Y'all go grab y'all a bottle of Old Hillside for the holidays. All my brothers from the collective, you know what I'm saying? Kirk Martin 5261. He said, what's up, coach? Congratulations on the milestone. Man, I appreciate you to the fullest. Kirk Martin, I appreciate you. Peace and blessings to your family. Happy holidays to you. Your boy JC, he said, more irony is one of Houston quarterbacks from Louisiana are rumored to be coming to Southern. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna be honest with you, your boy J. That's one thing I kind of been trying to temper in terms of, like, next season. One, I'm trying to temper my expectations because don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Southern should win 2 games again next season, but right now, based on what I'm seeing in terms of the commits you got, like those 15, 16 guys, I think you got some decent guys on paper. But on paper, last season Southern was supposed to win the SWAC West, and it didn't happen. They came in dead last in the SWAC West. So I'm tempering my expectations now. If he bringing a ridiculous amount of players in the portal, the way Tremaine Jackson did for PV, and he bringing in a lot of elite level players, yeah, I would have bigger expectations. But even with that being said, even if he brought in a whole team worth of players from, I don't know, from Colorado, a bunch of players from Colorado, Sacramento State, and LSU, even if he brought in a ridiculous amount of players, until I actually see it on the field, because I'm not going to lie, even after last spring, I was giddy. I'm like, all right, hey, the quarterback play is going to be better. Jalen Woods and Jamari Jones, the quarterback play is improved. But the spring really didn't show us nothing, because everything I was talking about in the spring, it didn't transfer over on the field when the fall rolled around, for one. Second of all, like everybody was saying, they knew Mark Frederick was a terrible offensive coordinator, and it showed. So I honestly believe Ken Merchant is going to be a huge upgrade at offensive coordinator. But at the same token, like I was saying, one of the coaches at my school said, shout out to Coach. He was like, Coach, you got the X's and O's in terms of the coaches, in terms of Ken Merchant and Todd Light. And, you got Donald Penn as offensive line coach. You got Anthony Balanceer, who played at Southern. But he was like, you need Jimmys and Joes. So if you just going to replace, those 20 players that were on the roster, I'm not going to lie, that in itself is not going to be enough to get you to where you need to go. You know what I'm saying? Cassie Odell said, did JSU try to steal Trey Holly? Yes, they did, Cassie. They sure did. They tried to steal him. I don't know if you follow. I don't think it was him. I think it was like one of his people or whatever. And I don't know if he reposted it or whatever. But I saw it on Facebook. But from my understanding, it was another social media post or whatever. And it basically was like, hey, it was something along the line, I'm paraphrasing it, but like, hey, you got a difficult decision to make, and I hope you make the best decision or whatever. And I'm like, a lot of his posts, he really haven't been saying anything about Southern University and this, that, and the third. And even when guys at the portal, they'd be like, oh, glory to God. And I want to thank, Jaguar Nation. No, I want to thank my family. I want to thank Jaguar Nation and woo. Like, he ain't been doing none of that. But based on what Tony Clayton said this morning on the Carlos Brown show, yes, Jackson State, after losing Miller and Terrell, they did try to steal Trey Holly. And the crazy thing about it is, with all the money they're dumping into the vet, and like I said, it ain't just a Jackson State issue. I think it's an issue across HBCUs, it's an issue across the SWAC, because the disparity when it comes to, I'm almost certain when it comes to Jackson State and Ole Miss when it comes to funding, Jackson State and Mississippi State when it comes to funding, man, we know it's a huge disparity. And, Jackson State really, don't have their own stadium. They got to, dump all that money into the old Veterans Memorial Stadium. So it's a fiasco. So I don't just blame it on Jackson State, but Jackson State, I think, them trying to get Holly, I don't think they have the money to really get him. I think that's the reason why they got so many players in the portal. I don't know. This is from what I heard. I'm not really standing 10 toes down on that. But even with that being said, they got like 25 players in the portal. But if any coach can handle it, I'm almost certain TC Taylor could. You know what I'm saying? Jay Good say Bama State whole backfield and all SWAC wideout dipped to the portal, decimated. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna be honest with you, but Coach Falk is more high profile in terms of being an NFL Hall of Famer, but in terms of head coaching experience, don't get me wrong, he surrounded himself with a good coaching staff, with Coach Johnson, Coach Merch, those type of guys, so on and so forth. But even with that being said, as a head coach, he's inexperienced. I think TC Taylor and Eddie Robinson are more equipped to deal with these type of issues than Coach Falk. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm almost certain Ben Miles, him being on a higher level and him going to Catholic High and having connections in Baton Rouge too, I'm almost certain, they're going to hit the portal and they're going to do what they need to do. But at the same token, if you TC Taylor and you Eddie Robertson, you kind of accustomed to doing this year in and year out. You're accustomed to navigating these waters, And, some people think T-Sean Smoot is going to be a real good quarterback. I mean, I think he was able to get him through the end of the season, but is he an Andrew Body? Time will tell, but I really don't see it. You know what I'm saying? Your boy Jason, I'm hearing so many rumors, but apparently Coach Falk is expected to dominate the portal. The hashtag play for Falk is real. Yeah. I've been seeing that a lot too. You know what I'm saying? And Jay Good say, and those Jimmys and Joes are gonna have to have the ability to pick up, learn, and study 2 new systems, returning players at least. He said, we'll be interested in how the offensive players pick up the go-go offense. Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie. Like, I was watching it online. Of course, it's a run-heavy offense, but at the same token, I mean, it's like inside zone on steroids. It's inside zone with a triple option. Realistically, it's almost like at one point, when I was going to assumption, you got all these teams that, ran like midline option. You give it to the fullback and you pull it. Then you run triple option. And then you got RPOs off of it. So I'm not going to lie, it's going to be a lot to pick up. You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing about it. All spread offenses are not created the same. So for people thinking that, oh, hey, the go-go offense is going to be, not too different from Mark Frederick's version of spread. Nah, it's night and day. It's a lot of reading, there's a lot of this, there's a lot of that. So, I mean, hey, it's going to be a lot for them to learn. Your boy Jay said Jackson State people were saying nobody on Southern could start for them and made fun of Holly Chucky Dog. He said they are a shameless group of people. Yeah, and the crazy thing about it is, for them saying that they're the deepest running back room in the SWAC, I'm not going to lie. I think they probably did have a slight edge over Southern from the standpoint of, Jason Gabriel really didn't get the kind of touches I expected him to get. Mike Franklin really didn't pan out. Amarian Asbury, you could see he really got potential, but he was real young. So the bulk of the heavy lifting, and even boy from La Tech, Princeton K. I mean, really, when it came down to it, if you look at the bulk of Southern production, it really came down to Trey Holly and Barry Remo, really, when you think about it. You know what I'm saying? Jay Good said, a lot of misdirection, a lot of motion, a lot of options. Quarterback has to be on point. Yeah, and I'm not going to lie, I'm going to be honest with you. We always talk about how a good portion of the season that Cameron McCoy was essentially Bashawn McCray 2.0 in terms of just being a glorified athlete. I'm not even going to lie. I'm just going to keep it a buck. Running that inside zone a good portion of the season, he was fumbling the ball left and right. Like, they had a couple fumbles against Valley with handoffs. Then, as the season progressed, he kept fumbling the ball more and more and more and more. And really, it got to the end of the season, his best game of the season was against Grambling in the Bayou Classic. But I don't know if y'all noticed, but they went from running out the shotgun and running inside zone to running more of a pistol look when he was in the game. Now, when Ashton Strada was in the game, there was more in the gun, but in all actuality, it was more of a pistol look. And I really think part of that was due to the fact that he was fumbling the ball, and I don't know if he was missing the reads, because it seemed, especially like you look at the Valley game, a couple of games later on in the season when he still was starting before They actually pulled him and gave Ashton Strata to start. It really was a lot of confusion in terms of the running back was reading one thing and he was reading another thing, and it was some miscommunication. So, and then if you go to Ashton Strata and Jalen Woods, both of those guys they're more passing quarterbacks. And of course, I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. Jalen Woods was light years ahead of Ashton Strata in terms of being able to go through his progressions and make reads quickly. However, he only played in a quarter and a half. So he was out the vast majority of the season. And not only that's another thing to consider. I mean, if you are run heavy offense, I'm sure you're not gonna be able to do like you did last year, where you had more of a run type package and a run type look for Cameron McCoy, and then when you went to Ashton Strata and Jalen Woods, it was more of a pass type offense. If it's run heavy like that, I'm almost certain you're really not gonna be able to do that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, and Jay Gill was like, LOL, it got to be on point. You know what I'm saying? Man, salute to my brother Trill Will. You know what I'm saying? Your boy JC, apparently Mike Franklin is coming back. I thought he wanted to get out of here. I guess getting a Hall of Famer changed his mind. From what I'm understanding, too, it wasn't just him, but they said Eric Reed Jr., and Mike Franklin and some of these other cats, and even Vince Sullivan, a lot of them were extremely hurt during the course of the season. So I was unaware of that. Man, salute to my brother. I am Trill Will. He said, congrats, bro. All your hard work is paying off. Salute to you, man. Man, salute to my brother. I am Trill Will. I'm just going to let y'all know now, especially for y'all individuals that like politics and you want to get the latest 411 in regards to, what party is more this party, more that party, or his point of views, his perspective from a political standpoint. Man, y'all go check out my brother channel. I am Trill Will, man. Salute to you, Trill Will. Happy holidays to you and your family. And man, y'all go support these brothers. Go support I am Trill Will, Thomas from the Bronx, and go get your bottle of Old Hill style bourbon. You did. Go support my brother Brent Fox, my brother Jared 11 Green. Man, I appreciate all the LDBC family members that came through. And like like you were saying, out the pistol. Yeah, that's crazy, you know what I'm saying? But Mike Franklin coming back, I'm not gonna lie. My issue with Franklin is a big back, but he kind of plays the same way that Remo and Holly and Gabriel and all of these smaller backs type play. It's like, if I want you to be a big back, I want you to be like Steele Adams, like Gerard Sims, like Lionel Nicholas. I want you to be a big, like, 4 yards in a cloud of dust type of back. And Franklin was he was kind of like the same as the smaller backs, just not as elusive and just a lot bigger. So Franklin's game was a lot, in my opinion, like Trey Holly, like Barry Remo, like Jason Gabriel, like Princeton Key. Realistically, Asbury, even though he's not as big as Franklin, he was the only guy that really was the real, more of a, straight line type runner. So I don't know how he fit, you know. So I don't know if him playing for Falk changed his mind, or the potential for him playing for Falk changed his mind. But I mean, it kind of is what it is. You know what I'm saying? Man, salute to the family. EA, he said, "Greetings, Coach. Hope you're enjoying the holidays, man. Salute to your fam. Happy holidays to you. I hope you're doing well, man. Christmas was awesome, amazing, and phenomenal. You know, we had a good time with the family. You know, me and my cousin, like we do every holiday, we got on checkerboard. You know, we talked, we spent time. We ate, we was merry. But of course, we looking. I forgot the bottle old hillside here at the crib, so we looking to crack open that bottle old hillside here for New Year's. You know what I'm saying? Jay Good said, when you go back and start looking at Sac State's film, a lot of those sets remind me your full house power eye, stacked eye formations, but it's difficult to guess where the play is going. Running back, average 6 yards per carry. Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, like, you know, looking at Sac State, looking at UNLV, go offense, like, I'm not gonna lie, it is, man, it's crazy, especially, and he said out the pistol. Yeah, and that thing about it is, it really kind of remind me of, you know, when I played at Belrose, you know, we ran a little triple option, not a whole lot. We ran more out of the wishbone, and we ran like strong and weak backfield, and we ran a lot of crossbuck type action. And it kind of reminds me of a lot of the teams in our district, and Terrebonne teams like Terrebonne and South Terrebonne and Market City and South Lafourche and Central Lafourche and all those teams. Like, you know, man, they ran a lot of like midline option, triple option. It didn't, like you said, it really didn't matter if you really ran out of the eye, the stacked eye, the full house backfield, wishbone, power eye, whatever. It is that type of look and feel. You know what I'm saying? Your boy JC, Coach Falk recruited an elite kick returner. I watched his tape. Dude is extremely fast and made all conference. Maybe we find our next Willie Quinn. Yeah, Jay Good was telling me the same thing. Jay Good was saying he was looking at the footage on him. And I'm not gonna lie, you know, a lot of times he and I have certain conversations behind the scenes. And truthfully speaking, when it comes to like evaluate certain positions, you let Jay Good say, hey, this dude this and this dude that. For the most part, he right the vast majority of the time. So he was saying the same thing in regards to like that punt and kick returner you talking about. In the way he was talking, like you saying Willie Quinn, the vibe I got from different people, they were saying more like Ezra Landry, Fred Bailey, Kenyatta Sparks type of guy. But they all kind of elite level Southern University punt and kick returners. So, you know, it kind of is what it is, you know what I'm saying? Your boy Jay said, to be able to stop the go-go offense, you have to be extremely disciplined and have elite IQ. It will definitely confuse SWAC teams. Yeah, without question. Because I'm not going to lie, I'm going to be honest with you. And from what I'm seeing, it's more complicated than when we played in high school. But when we was in high school and we were playing a team that was, you know, some type of triple option type team, teams that ran like a flex bone or wing bone or whatever they ran, like you had to play assignment football, you know what I'm saying? You know, we mostly played a odd man front at Assumption, but even when we ran like a 6-2, like I think was freshman and sophomore year, and then my junior senior year, we ran to like a 50 type look. But even when you did that, you know, everybody had to play the assignment. So, you know, the D tackles had to do this, the nose guard had to do that, you know, the ends had to do that, the linebackers had to do this. So whether we ran a 6-2 or whether we ran a 5-2, hey, everybody had to, you know, be disciplined and they had to play assignment football. So yeah, it's definitely gonna give teams in a SWAC fits. But I think the big issue is you gotta have a good trigger man from a quarterback standpoint. You gotta have a legit dual threat quarterback. You gotta have somebody that can make all of these reads without fumbling the ball. The way they turn the ball over so much this past season in terms of all the fumbles, all the times you put the ball on the ground. So you got to have a quarterback that can make all the reads, and yet at the same time you have a quarterback that's going to keep the defense off balance enough to make plays in the passing game. And I think if you have a quarterback that could do that and that could make enough plays in the passing game to keep the opposing defense honest, then yeah, I think it's going to be able to do damage. But you got to have the trigger man on you know what I'm saying? EA said, Coach, these young kids don't know about crossbuck. They don't. But realistically, I mean, when it came out, when we running the crossbuck out of, strong and weak backfield, for the most part, if you look at the way like UNLV and Sac State ran the go-go offense, the only difference is in terms of like the crossbuck action, these backs are like they kind of move side by side in the eye. But we ran split backfield, strong backfield. So if you ran a split backfield, hey, you just give it to one back and fake it to the other back coming around, or you fake it to one back and give it to the other back. But it's the same concept. It's just out of different formation, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, you're right though. These younger kids don't know. Yeah, Jay Good was like that punt and kick returner, like he the truth, he nice, And like I say, I don't care whether he'll be a Willie Quinn, Ezra Landry, Fred Bailey, Kenyatta Sparks, Danny Johnson. I don't care who he could be, who he is. If as long as he an elite level punt kick returner and he first team all SWAC and teams scared to kick him the ball, yeah, I'm with that. You know what I'm saying? Your boy Jay said Grambling couldn't even stop Barry Remo and Trey Holly inside zone. He said, imagine the go-go offense. We might put up 50 on them. Yeah. EA say 5-2 defense with a monster, strong safety, walk down in the box if necessary, old school defense. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna be honest with you. Assumption that's what we ran. We ran a 5-2 look, and we would walk down that strong safety. But the way we did it, we didn't run it like a true 5-3. Like the way I ran my defense when I was at Capital Middle, it was more of a hybrid, like 4-4, 5-3 look. But at Assumption, it was more of a 5-2 look, and we walked the strong safety to the tight inside. You know what I'm saying? And the irony is when we played all these teams that ran like the wing bone and the flex bone and and the wing tee, the old Eddie Robinson Grambling wing tee, for the most part, like everybody just played assignment football. The nose guard had his responsibility. 2 D tackles had their responsibility. Outside linebackers had their responsibility. Inside linebackers had their responsibility. And a strong safety for us was more of he was an extra guy that could walk down in the box, but he had more pass responsibility first. And I don't know, it was stupid to me. I'm like, why you got pass responsibility first when pretty much all the teams we playing against are run first? I mean, they're going to run the ball first. I mean, I think them last 2 years, the only teams we played that really was looking to pass the ball first was, maybe Broadmoor. Not the Broadmoor. I'm not going to lie, Broadmoor was better this season than they were last season, covering games for Louisiana All-America Sports Network. But Broadmoor was better back then in them late 90s than they have been the past 2 years, you know what I'm saying? But Broadmoor was the only team that really was looking to pass the ball first. Everybody else we played, whether we talking about Donaldsonville, St. James, Morgan City, Edie White, East St. No, we didn't play East St. John. We played, like I said, Edie White, Morgan City, Central Lafourche, South Lafourche, Terrebonne, South Terrebonne, ETL Bourgeois, Vanderbilt Catholic, St. James, Donaldsonville, Lutcher, A-Meat. I take that back. St. Thomas More. So St. Thomas More and Broadmoor was the only teams really looking to throw the ball. So St. Thomas More, well, they were kind of balanced. They ran like this speed option, and they ran the pro slot, not out the pistol, but the regular pro slot out the eye. They threw the ball a lot. They was kind of like a 50-50 type offense in Broadmoor. But other than that, everybody else, they pretty much was looking to, run the ball. So I didn't understand the way they use the strong safety, but it is what it is. Our strong safety was smart anyway. They were looking to play the run first and not the pass first, the way the coaches taught them. But it is what it is. I mean, I was a nose guard anyway, so it didn't really, Your boy Jay said, I would say this is a very exciting time for Southern. The vibe feels so different from the source I got. They told me January the 2nd will be Christmas for Jaguar Nation. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I'm going to be honest with you. Your boy Jay, there is a lot of excitement around the program, and the feel is different. The vibe is different. All the media attention is good. But at the same token, don't get me wrong. I'm an optimistic guy. I'm a see the glass being full as opposed to half empty. But I realize, like, you can't build an empire in a day. And I think more than anything, for me, I'm not telling other people they shouldn't be optimistic. They shouldn't have hope. I'm just saying, for me, I have to have kind of tempered, realistic expectations. And some of the same stuff you get behind the scenes, I'm getting behind the scenes too. And like I said, somebody told me like a few weeks back, they was like, man, Southern going to be so good next year, coach. They're going to beat everybody by 49, 56 points. Every other HBCU, I'm like, bro, pump your brakes. I mean, even if you brought in like a completely different team, based on what I saw last spring and the hope and optimism I had covering Southern University the spring game and saying, hey, guess what? Southern going to win the SWAC West, and they're going to beat Southern and Jackson State again in the SWAC championship game, and woo. And it didn't turn out the way I expected. I'm not saying I'm down and Southern is not going to get back to that point. I'm just saying, first and foremost, I have to see it on the field. I'm tempering my expectations. And not only that, unless there's a lot of turnover with this particular roster, Coach Falk and his staff, they just can't wave a magic wand and expect to win the SWAC championship the first year. Because what people don't realize is, yeah, Pete Richardson won the SWAC championship his first year at Southern, but the cupboards were not bare. And when I say that, Marino Chasm and Gerald Kimball had a lot of talent on their team. Even if you look at the players that were younger, like Eric Randall. Eric Randall played a lot as a true freshman at Southern. And even if you look at Tremaine Jackson, this past season at PV, yeah, he brought 70 players from the transfer portal. But even with that being said, he didn't take over a team that was historically bad. Like, I've been watching Southern football my entire life. This is literally the worst Southern team I've seen in my entire life. So at the end of the day, I'm not saying Southern. I'm not saying he's not gonna win the SWAC championship his first year at Southern, and I'm not telling people what they should think or what they should feel. But at the same token, I have tempered expectations. My thing is, more than anything, I want next season to be a good foundational season. I want them to build a solid foundation, a great foundation with a great chief cornerstone. And then after that point, you can start to build your house from that point forward. Keep it up, fam said. Hold up. I don't know why I jumped. But keep it up, fam said, as a Jackson State supporter, I can't wait to see Southern in the Celebration Bowl next season. They look like winners, and that's exactly what they'll do next season, win. All right, I definitely hope that's the case. Your boy Jay said, he said, Graves gave me PTSD seeing us barely beat Valley, then lose by 20 weekly was traumatic. I almost cried seeing us win the Bayou Classic. LOL. I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna be honest with you. Your boy Jay. I knew it was gonna be a close game in the Bayou Classic. And from the looks of things, Mickey Joseph got a contract extension. Nothing has been like made official yet, but it looks like he's gonna be back. I'm glad he's gonna be back at Grambling. But Grambling is not a 7-win team, in my personal opinion. And Jay Good and I was talking about this earlier. Southern beating up on Virginia Lynchburg and Savannah State and Florida Memorial, beating Florida Memorial 86-0. And at halftime, you're 56-0. I'm like, all right, I'm ready to go. And my nephew like, no, Uncle Jim, I won't stay. And I'm like, buddy, Southern is up 56-0. He said, no, that's all right. I won't stay. I won't stay to the end. I'm like, bro, you just like your grandfather, bro. But anyway, like, those wins were empty calories, and it didn't do nothing. It did not do anything for Southern University's program. And those 3 wins that Southern, I'm sorry, I gotta be saying Southern. Those 3 wins that Grambling got against Division II schools, those were empty calories. And you saw in the Bayou Classic that, in all actuality, Grambling was not a 7-win team. Even if you put Grambling up against some of the other bad teams, bad FCS teams in the state of Louisiana, for whatever reason, I'm not gonna lie, Louisiana college football was down this season. You had a couple good teams like Tulane. Tulane probably had the best record out of all the teams in state, but for whatever reason, like, the in-state schools were bad this year. But even if you'd have put Grambling up against like a bad Northwestern team, man, I'm not even certain Grambling beat Northwestern, to be truthful. So those 3 wins against like Kentucky State and the other two Division II schools, and in all actuality, Grambling cheated to beat Kentucky State. At the end of the day, like, that was empty calories. And it showed in the Bayou Classic that Grambling wasn't as good as people thought they were. And in all actuality, yeah, they beat Jackson State for the 2nd year in a row. But truthfully speaking, I really don't think they just like outplayed Jackson State. It was more of a circumstance type of thing where Jacoby and Morgan got hurt, and TC Taylor tried to be the smartest guy in the room, and he didn't put the right backup quarterback in, and I think that's what kind of got Grambling that win at the end of the day. And not only that, but having a good kicker. Tony Clayton talked about it, having an elite level quarterback and an elite level kicker. Nah, that in itself is not gonna win you a SWAC championship. But I'm not gonna lie, Grambling kicker was light years better than Nathan Zimmer. And no disrespect to Nathan Zimmer, I understand Nathan Zimmer was a true freshman coming from Central. Central right around the corner from Southern. But even with that being said, like, Grambling's kicker was considerably better than Nathan Zimmer. And I'm not gonna lie, like, Southern need that type of kicker. I'm talking about a guy that could make long 49-some-yard field goals. I think what he made with a 52-yard field goal during the year at some point. So at the end of the day, I'm not even gonna lie, like, hey, like, that's gonna be the thing. Keep it up, fam. I'll say it now. For the players on Southern who are pushed out, they need to immediately go the JUCO route and keep their eligibility intact. Keep it up, fam, man. You are wild for that one. Your boy Jay Good said, LOL. I feel you. EA said, heard one of SU big money boosters this morning said that some money from new food contract will be redirected for facilities. Yeah, we talked about the Tony Clayton interview. I mean, we talked about that like a good portion of this show. Yeah, Tony Clayton is on the board at Southern University, EA, and he is one of Southern University's big money boosters. He's a multi-millionaire. He's one of the top local lawyers, and not only that, but like he said, like HBCUs, he said if you go across the country, if you look at like the state of Mississippi, basically Jackson State, Mississippi Valley, Alcorn State, those HBCUs help contribute to the middle class in the state of Mississippi. You look at Southern and Grambling, it does the same thing for the state of Louisiana. If you look at DC, same thing, with like Howard. You look at the state of Alabama, Alabama State, Alabama A&M. You look at Texas, you got Prairie View, you got Texas Southern. So essentially, he was saying like HBCUs contribute so much in terms of middle class and upper middle class. And he was saying that he's a product of Southern University. Southern University has helped make him a multi-millionaire. And basically, he won't give back to Southern. And he even talked about, when he passed, his kids probably going to be upset about how much of a donation he's going to lead towards Southern University. You know what I'm saying? Keep It Up Fam said, bad coaching by T.C. Taylor with the Jacobian Morgan injury. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I was surprised to see him start in a SWAC championship game, and he got hurt. I'm not going to lie. It kind of looked like the morale kind of, went down after that. You know what I'm saying? Your boy Jay said, get new locker rooms. 2, Tony Clayton is doing his thing. Oh, no, I'm not going to lie. Big facts, your boy Jay. Like, Tony Clayton really doing a lot of heavy lifting. And he really, really doing big things, you know what I'm saying? Salute to Tony Clayton being on the board and, making moves, really being an elite level booster and contributor and fundraiser. Don't get me wrong, from what I'm hearing, they say, Roman Banks has done a good job in terms of help raising money also. But I'm not going to lie, like really, Tony Clayton really doing this thing. Your boy T said him saying Coach Falk took a tour and pointed out things that needed fixing. What the heck was Graves doing? Well, I'm not gonna lie, like, especially from a financial standpoint, Graves and in the same stratosphere as Falk. And I'm not gonna lie, you gotta realize people like Graves and Dooley, they were the issue with the way Southern did business in terms of the favoritism and the nepotism and the good old boy network and go along and get along and that type of thing. All of these issues have kind of put Southern University in the position that they are currently in. That's why Southern University is in a rebuild mode in terms of, trying to get back to where they used to be. And the way they did business is that standard operating practice in terms of the way they operated, the way they did business, so on and so forth. Now, that's the reason why Southern is falling to this point. And basically, it was time for a paradigm shift. It was time for changing the way of thinking, the way of doing business, the ideology. And that's the reason why you got Coach Falk in, and that's why things are going the way they're going. Your boy Jay said he was over in Israel. Yep, he talked about the basketball game. He said working on getting money for the school, and those guys were asking him about Coach Falk. He was like, yeah, man, what y'all know about American football over here in Israel? So, yeah, he did say that. He was saying that he's trying to get Southern University basketball team a game with Tel Aviv next season in the future. And basically, he was talking about getting some of that, getting some of that money, get some of that bag from overseas. And basically, they was asking about Coach Falk. So he was saying, from this point forward, like Southern is international. And in addition to them being international, they was talking about to recruits like Southern University. The big thing back in the gap when I was going to Southern in those late 90s was being able to recruit the city of Baton Rouge and being able to recruit the I-10 corridor from New Orleans to Baton Rouge, being able to recruit the river parishes, East St. John, West St. John, St. James, that area, being able to recruit the bayou from Donaldsonville You know, you got players like Michael Landry that went to Donaldsonville High School. Players like, you know, you just got a lot of players, you know, that came from that area from Donaldsonville to Thibodeau, and even like, you know, Terrebonne Parish. So, you know, Lionel Nicholas, he came from Donaldsonville High. Melvin Williams Jr. came from Ascension Catholic. Michael Landry came from Donaldsonville High School. So being able to recruit those areas were really big, and just being able to recruit the state of Louisiana. But the way it's looking like, he's not just going to recruit that area, he's going to recruit nationally. So major props to the coaching staff. Like they're doing their thing from a recruiting standpoint. You know what I'm saying? They're not just recruiting locally, but they are recruiting nationally. And in terms of trying to get the basketball game between the Southern Jaguars and Tel Aviv, that's a big international move. So, you know, major shout out, major props to Tony Clayton. He really doing this thing. Keep it up, fam. Say a fast track, facility upgrades, playing, partnerships. Marshall Falk say it ain't so. Well, you know, they kind of asked him about that. They was like, why are you waiting? Like, why are y'all waiting until like Marshall Falk is in place to kind of do those type of things? And just to kind of co-sign your point, keep it up, fam. Basically, Tony Clayton was like, yeah, you know, things have been in the works, but he was like, I'd rather be late than never. And rather be late than never. And that kind of shows, hey, they doing what they're doing, you know what I'm saying? Your boy Jay say 24/7 Sports is tracking Southern recruits now. The media is finally watching Southern football. Yeah, I mean that's a big thing in itself. And not only that, but I don't want Southern. I mean, of course, I want Southern to win the SWAC championship. I want Southern to win the Celebration Bowl. I want Southern to win the Black National Championship. But I just kind of want to see HBCUs just as a whole get the recognition that they're due, because, you know, Jay Good and I talk about it. My brother Jerry Lovin Green and I talk about it. Like lately, these PWI Power Fives, they've kind of been using HBCUs as a recruiting ground and a breeding ground to kind of add depth to their rosters. And truthfully speaking, you know, keep it up, fam. You talk about Jackson State, but I think Jackson State is going to be a victim to that from the standpoint of a lot of these players that are in a transfer portal for Jackson State. You know, a couple of these guys like Miller, you know, hey, he might end up at a PWI Power 5. I think Andrew Body definitely going to end up at a PWI Power 5. So at the end of the day, you know, it's crazy how, you know, these powerful PWIs, they're using HBCUs as a breeding ground for recruiting and poaching players. You know, if you've been in an institution for a year or two and you're a dog, you've been first team all SWAC for a couple of years, and they feel like you contribute to their program, trust me, they're coming after you. Keep it up, fam. Say Southern is getting facility upgrades with Marshall Falk. Jackson State got facility upgrades with Dion, and UAPB need to be next with Ed Reed. Well, I'm not gonna lie. I think the issue, I kind of mentioned Valley and UAPB earlier. Keep it up, fam. From a financial standpoint, UAPB and Valley, they kind of, it's no coincidence that, you know, minus this season, because UAPB beat the brakes off of Southern. But just in general, it's no coincidence that UAPB been at the bottom of the West and Valley been at the bottom of the East for a minute. The reason being is because from a financial standpoint, they don't have the resources to really compete with the upper echelon teams in the SWAC. And not only that, not only do they not have the facilities, but they don't have the resources either from a monetary standpoint, you know. Howard Reagan, 1063, salute to you, fam. He said, welcome, Coach Falk, to the coaching team. We hope you can travel to the MEAC homes of champions to play some real football. The South Carolina State Bulldog national champ. Hey, I'm going to keep it a buck. In all actuality, PV threw that game away against South Carolina State. Howard, whether you want to admit it or not, they threw that game away. So at the end of the day, Howard, I'm not gonna lie. Y'all are Black national champions. I gotta give y'all props. Salute to y'all. Salute to former Southern University assistant coach Kenneth Berry. Congratulations to former Southern University assistant coach Kenneth Berry and the South Carolina State Bulldogs. But I'm not gonna lie, Tremaine Jackson tried to be cute for the second week in a row, and he pissed that game away. Dude, the reverse didn't work against Jackson State, and it killed your momentum the week before. It didn't come back to bite you in the behind in the SWAC championship game, but it came back to bite you in the behind in a Celebration Bowl. So, congratulations to South Carolina State, but guess what? Tremaine Jackson threw that game away, unfortunately. Tony Clay saying Harry Carmichael and Mel Blunt called after we hired Coach Farkas Hughes. Yeah, I heard him say that also too. And of course, both of those gentlemen, they on my all-time list. Not just a Southern University players from the Pete Richardson era to now, but as good as Michael Hayes was. Michael Hayes was the best Southern University player I've seen in person with my own two eyes. Harry Carmichael's in another stratosphere when it comes to wide receivers. And the same thing when it comes to Mel Blunt and Aeneas Williams. Mel Blunt and Aeneas Williams are the two best Southern University cornerbacks and defensive backs of all time. And, yeah, he did mention that. Your boy Jay said all of our legends are finally coming back. Yeah, of course, we had Avery Johnson and Aeneas Williams at the first press conference for Marshall Faulk. So, yeah, the legends coming back. That's a big thing. That was huge. You know what I'm saying? Your boy Jay said the way Tony moving, he might throw Andrew Body a bag to come to Southern. I'm going to keep it a buck. Hey, I wouldn't even be mad at that. I think the only issue with Body is, man, Body is injury prone. Like, they talked about it today. I've talked about it on shows in the past. If I'm not mistaken, I think what Body was at TSU for like 3 years. He was at Alabama State for like 2 or 3 years. These like 6 years, he'd have been out for the year for like 3 of them. So, like, from a talent standpoint, Body is a dog. I was talking about Body at the beginning of the season, and Christopher Dukes was like, man, Coach Body ain't never did nothing. And I'm like, yeah, I know y'all GSU fans, y'all high on Jacoby and Morgan. And Jacoby and Morgan made a lot out of me, but Andrew Body was the SWAC offensive player of the year for a reason. Once he was finally able to stay healthy, we saw what Andrew Body was really able to do. But the problem is, you get Body, his body going to stay healthy. That's the thing about it. And you can't say, hey, we just going to make you a pure pocket passer, because Body is a legit dual threat, you know what I'm saying? So, Body showed what he was able to do this past season. I was glad he was able to stay healthy most of the season. But I'm not going to lie, we got to keep it a buck. If he was able to throw Body a bag, that's crazy. That's not crazy. If he able to throw Andrew Body a bag and get Andrew Body to Southern, I'll be cool with it if I know Body would stay healthy the entire season. That ain't really no guarantee. You know what I'm saying? Your boy G said Coach Berry might lose his mind if we make the Celebration Bowl to face him. He does not like celebrity coaches. Oh, no, I'm not going to lie. It ain't just him. It's a lot of these coaches. Like, they really not big on the celebrity coaches, you know what I'm saying? And even Trey Oliver, coach over whatever he had their first game of the season. Yeah, hey, I'm sure Tennis Berry the same way, you know what I'm saying? Man, salute to my brother, Nathaniel Frank. He said, what up, brother? Go Jags. Yes, sir. Salute to you, Nathaniel Frank. He said, what's up? What's good? Man, I'm blessed and highly favored. Had an excellent, amazing, and phenomenal Christmas. And I'm looking to get the new year kicked off in the right way. I'm not really in the gym no more. I'm in the classroom now. I don't have to worry, but basketball games, during the Christmas break and over the holidays and having my team ready to start the new year. But at the same token, I'm an administrator now, so when you move up to a new level, you got a different set of problems. You know what I'm saying? Your boy Jay said people saying Body wanted to come to Southern in 2024, but Graves never looked this way. Yeah, Jay Good said the exact same thing, and he was like, not just Body, but he was saying Body, and I don't know if he was talking about one of the wide receivers that ended up at Jackson State. He was like Graves didn't even entertain him. I don't know who that was, like Fortillion or whoever. They were saying that he was interested in coming to Southern at one point, but Graves didn't even look his way. But it go to show you, like, I'm just gonna keep it a buck, like just the incompetence he showed this past season as a head coach. Looking at all the players that he had opportunity, like he didn't pursue no. Look at how many first team all SWAC players were in the portal, and he didn't even make an attempt to really pursue those players, for one. And then second of all, not only did he not make an attempt to pursue some of those players, but so many of the players that he ended up pursuing really wasn't worth pursuing. And like Jay Good and I was talking about this morning, some of those players that I talked about in the spring, like Jamari Jones, like those guys didn't even make it to the fall. So at the end of the day, I'm not gonna lie, like everything that Graves did, this season, it really kind of showed in terms of what you always talk about, your boy G, his lack of recruiting, and not only him being bad from a recruit standpoint, but just from a X's and O's standpoint, just him being a trash coach. The thing about it is, he talk about how Jaguar Nation has been trashing him. We are not trashing his character. And like I said, I'm going to repeat this. Everybody I talk to that has met Terrence Graves up close and personal, they're saying he good Christian guy. He's a good guy. He's a stand-up guy. This, that, and the third. Like, they all say positive things about him. But in terms of him being a head coach, like, he was a terrible head coach at Southern. His first year, he went to the SWAC championship game. His second year, they only won 2 games. And it showed the lack of recruiting that him and the staff did. And, you didn't just miss on 1 or 2 guys. You missed on a ridiculous amount of guys. So that was the reason why Southern was historically bad. So, yeah, I'm not going to lie. Like, Terrence Graves, he just did a terrible job. You know what I'm saying? Keep it up, fam. Say question. He said, what's stopping Body from going to Southern now with Marshall Falk, who can get him a better NFL look? I hope he don't just take the money just to sit on the bench. Well, Jay Good and I talked about this behind the scenes. From what I'm understanding, I don't know what he really looking for, but from what I'm understanding, like, he wants somewhere between like $1 million and $2 million in NIL money. And I'm like, dang, that's a bag. Like, between $1 million and $2 million. So I'm not saying he's not trying to make it to the NFL, but I think he's trying to cash out. But this is the thing about it. For me, I want the best of both worlds for him. I want him to get the best possible deal he can get, the most possible money he can get. But like you said, I don't want him to just go stand there and hold a clipboard and be a backup, or go somewhere and even become a starter and get hurt and be out for the year again. I want him to go somewhere, get him a bag, get him the $1 million he's looking for, the 1.5 million or whatever he's looking for. I want him to get that amount of money and go and ball out the way he did this past season at Alabama State. And then not only that, but able to get looks from the NFL and make it to the NFL. Because at the end of the day, even though he didn't go to Southern, which he should have, like your boy G pointed out, and Jay Good talked about behind the scenes, that Graves didn't even make no effort to get him. But even with that being said, like, I want him to go to NFL and thrive and do well and prosper. And not just him, but, Miller, Terrell, all of these guys that played at different SWAC schools. Because, my brother Jared 11 Green channel, people was kind of throwing a little shade my way, basically saying, like, Coach, you was pushing hard for more than one or two players from the SWAC to make it to the NFL, or more than one or two HBCU players to make it to the NFL. But he was like, there was only a couple of them that was worthy of making it. Well, I want to change that narrative and move in a different direction of where, the SWAC and HBCUs are constantly putting out NFL quality players, guys like Danny Johnson, like Jatari Carter, like Tavares Jackson, like Steve Air McNair, like Robert Mathis. I mean, a lot of legends have come through the SWAC, and I kind of want to keep that ball rolling. And I not only want Southern to eventually get to the point where they are a dominant HBCU team and win the HBCU Black National Championship, but I want them to be a dominant FCS team to where I'm confident if they go down there to Thibodeau, to Nichols, they're beating the brakes off of Nicholls State. If they go to Natchitoches and play against Northwestern, I'm confident they're gonna beat the brakes off of Northwestern. If they go to Hammond and play against Southeastern, I'm confident they're gonna beat the brakes off of Southeastern. If they go to Lake Charles like they did last year, I don't want them to just lead 85% of the game and piss the game away at the end and end up losing to a bad McNeese State team and starting quarterback that got 100 racks that really was supposed to be your starting quarterback at one point. I want you to go to Lake Charles and put a beat down on McNeese State. Any FCS team in the state of Louisiana, including Grambling, I want every time they see Southern on their schedule in the next few years to be like, nah, we don't want to smoke with them. Like, nah, we don't want it. We don't want the problems. So that's what I wanted to eventually get to the point where not only is Southern, and I'm not saying next year, I'm saying in the next few years, get to the point where not only are you the best team in the HBCU realm, you win the Black National Championship, but I want you to be an elite level FCS team. And they mentioning you with, in the top 5 of the FCS, even though they can't play in the 1AA and the FCS playoffs because, the kind of money you're going to get from the Bayou Classic and the SWAC Championship game and the Celebration Bowl, like you'll be stupid to go join the FCS playoffs. You got to pay to play in the FCS playoffs. You know what I'm saying? And you're not going to generate nearly the kind of money you're going to make by playing the Bayou Classic and then hosting the SWAC Championship game and then going to win the Celebration Bowl. It's in your best interest to not worry about the FCS playoffs. But I want you to be a top 5 dominant FCS caliber school. That's what I want Southern to eventually get to that point. And I think that should be the goal. Your boy Jay said, I've seen so many of our HBCU players move up and literally never play or be heard from again. And it's disappointing. Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, Jay Good and I talked about this morning when we were texting back and forth. I was talking about how, I talked about, Trey Lang, and I'm like, he'd have been better off if he'd stayed at Southern. And he got so offended, and he jumped in the comments section, and I guess he tried to have a back and forth. And I'm like, I just pointed out how, if you look at, he was JC, then he came to Southern. Like his whole college career, his best year was his best year of his college football career was at Southern. Then he went to Indiana University. Then he went to Eastern Michigan. And he was like, if I did my homework, I would have known he was hurt. And I'm like, well, it ain't my job to follow you and keep up with you. I just was saying, like, your best production year was at Southern. And you had your most production at Southern. But he used that real good spring game as a launching pad to go to Indiana University. And, congratulations to him. He made it to the CFL. But, he was like, I don't know his situation. I don't know what his family situation like or whatever. And I'm like, all these good things I said about him, he really didn't even acknowledge none of that. All he talked about was me criticizing him leaving and going to Indiana and Eastern Michigan when he was his most productive at Southern. And that's all I was saying. And too many instances, HBCU players, they go to Power 5 PWIs and they really don't see the light of day. So at the end of the day, like, if you go up, out, don't get me wrong, I want you to get a bag, I want you to get paid, I want you to get your money, but I want you to go there and I want you to shine. And not only shine, but I want you to use that as a stepping stone to make it to the NFL. You know what I'm saying? So it is what it is. Your boy Jay say Southern came close to beating McNeese multiple times with mediocre teams. He said, I love to face them again next week or next year after. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna keep it a buck. Like, I remember McNeese when Jason Rollins was the head coach. Man, Southern was up like 21-10 at halftime, and they ended up losing like either 24-21 or 24-27, one of the two. And another time before that, they should have beat McNeese. They lost. At first, they was beating up on Northwestern State, but eventually, when Troy Williams was starting quarterback, when they really should have had Terrence Levy starting, they went to Natchitoches. They didn't beat Northwestern, so eventually, like the first time Southern played against Northwestern, they beat them with 31-13, and the score does not indicate how dominant Southern was, because I was at that game in the Superdome senior, and Mama brought us, and I'm not gonna lie, they just beat the brakes off of Northwestern. But eventually Northwestern, came back later on in the 90s. In the early 90s, Southern was dominating Northwestern, but in the late 90s, Northwestern kind of turned the tide. And then I'm not even gonna bring up Nickel State because, senior wanted to go to Southern so bad, but my grandmother told him, hey, better get your behind and walk, take your behind and walk to the head of the street and get on that bus and go to Thibodeau, because Thibodeau is closer to where I'm from. But he wanted to go to Southern. My mom graduated from Southern. He spent more time at Southern than Nichols. He didn't graduate from Nichols, but he couldn't stand Nichols. And basically, like, Southern, as good as their teams was, even the 93 national championship team went to Thibodeau, to John Gidget Stadium, and lost to Nickel State. So for whatever reason, Nickel State always got up for Southern. And no, Nickel State has been Southern's kryptonite. But truthfully speaking, I want Southern to get to the point where they not only dominate Nickel State and Northwestern and McNeese and Southeastern. I don't want none of those Southern Conference teams to even look Southern way. I want Southern to be that good and that dominant. You know what I'm saying? But I appreciate everybody that came through that showed love. I appreciate every single subscriber, and I definitely appreciate all the super chats, from the family, from my brother Big Joe Town, from my brother Jay Good, from Thomas from the Bronx, from I Am Trill Will, and just from everybody that came through, showed love, all my day one subscribers, everybody that was in the chat during this live stream, my first monetized live stream, and everybody that's going to listen to it on playback. Of course, I know a lot of my fans, a lot of my subscribers, they're getting ready to go watch LSU play against the University of Houston. Now, I know some of Jaguar Nation, they can't stand LSU, but I'm going to just keep it a buck. I know there's a good contingency of Jaguar Nation that is not only a part of Jaguar Nation, they're also a part of Tiger Nation too. And I ain't even mad at that, you know what I'm saying? But I'm getting ready to get off of here. Let me get these last couple chats. Your boy Jay said Coach Falk did say he doesn't mind getting players that will use us as a stepping stone or stepping stool to get to the FBS using his name and selling pitch. The team will be loaded with talent, but the turnover rate will suck. Oh no, I'm not gonna lie. If it gets to where it needs to be, the turnover rate is gonna be high, but I'm gonna keep it a buck. I'd rather the turnover rate to be high year in and year out and be Celebration Bowl champions than, be what we were this past season. And truthfully speaking, I'm not even gonna lie. Like, even JSU, JSU, from the Dion point, where that second season, because people don't realize they played twice in the same calendar year. They had a spring season and then the fall season. People just remember that fall season. They don't remember how bad JSU struggled in that spring season under Deion. But truthfully speaking, I don't think Jackson State has been as dominant as I would want them to be. Don't get me wrong; they had an excellent season last year, but I mean, this team this year they wasn't, what I thought they would be at the beginning of the season. But at the end of the day, like I want Southern to even like way surpass that, not just be what J State was last year. I want them to way surpass that. Man, salute to Joseph David. He said, "What's up, Coach?" He said, "Is Trey Holly exploring his options?" Saw an interesting post on Twitter. We talked about that. If you listen to Carlos Brown's show this morning, from 11 to 1, basically Tony Clayton said Jackson State tried to poach Trey Holly, even though Jackson State, with the whole financial situation and them dumping all that money into the vet, like Jackson State really don't have the money that they once had. But he said they put up the money to keep him. So from my understanding, Trey Holly is going to be, based on what Tony Clayton said, he put up some bread to keep Trey Holly at Southern. He said saw an interesting post on Twitter. So, yeah, Tony Clayton addressed that on the Carlos Brown show. And like I said, salute to Carlos Brown again. He said there was a bidding war for him between us and Jackson State, and apparently Tony Clayton wanted to keep him here, Joseph David. Yeah, I just said the same thing. Jay Good said retool and refuel. That's the price of this era. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Like, if we get it to where I want it to be, it don't matter if you got to retool every year. As long as you winning Celebration Bowls and you winning championships and you kicking behind and you taking names, that's all I really want. But that's it for this live stream. I'll catch y'all on the rebound. Happy holidays to everyone. Hope y'all had a Merry Christmas. Hope y'all have a blessed and prosperous New Year. I'm going to be back on Monday with episode 20 of the Tailgate Party. On tomorrow, we're going to be on my brother, Chad 11 Green channel for the next edition of the Southern Baller Show. I'll catch y'all on the rebound. Y'all have a blessed and phenomenal evening. Peace and blessings to everybody. Happy holidays to everybody. And go Jags. You did.